You get to be the weird one. Okay. You get to be the witchy one in the relationship. Just hold that space down. Like, is it cool if it's a shared space? Totally. I'm not saying don't look for that. Hello, and welcome to the Empress podcast. I am your host, Jessica, known in the online space as Jess the Empress. I started this podcast to help you be present with yourself, cope with chaos, and simplify your life. I do this by combining psychology, behavioral science, and the tarot. I have a background in mental health, specifically a master's in clinical social work from USC, and I'm a professional tarot reader. So get ready to have a nurturing, creative, and empowering experience with me as we use practical magic. Hey, hi, hello. Welcome back to the podcast. It's me, your girl Jess. I'm happy to be here with you guys. I am going to talk about something that I've been seeing with my clients. And I think it's really important that we go over this because what I'm seeing is a lot of unnecessary struggling when it comes to dating. I feel like there's a lot of people that get so excited to be on the spiritual journey and figure out who they are through the lens of different types of spiritual practices, be it, mindfulness, meditation, or even more philosophical, getting into the occult, whatever. For like my witchy babes that are out there, they're so excited and they're so lit up about their spiritual journey. But then when it comes to dating, there's like this massive clash because they want a spiritual guy, but there's something that happens. And I feel like people expect spirituality to look the same or the practices to be the same as them. And that's what they're looking for in another person. I want to give you guys a couple of reframes because I don't want you to keep making the mistakes that I'm seeing other people make. So just let's dive in. Prioritizing spiritual compatibility over fundamental compatibility. Your partner might not necessarily have a full, totally unblocked abundance mindset. However, if he is just generally good with money, regardless of whether he has a couple of blocks about money or not, if he can save, if he's got a budget, if he sticks to the budget, and if generosity is a key thing that you look for in a partner, then you guys in that area would be more fundamentally compatible than spiritually compatible. If you only focus on the spiritual practices or the beliefs that we talk about here on the spiritual podcast, it makes it difficult to really appreciate the fundamental compatibility. Because I don't think that your partner has to meditate. I don't think that your partner absolutely has to be doing shadow work. I don't necessarily even feel like your partner has to be in therapy. But what I do believe is that your partner needs to have things that keep them balanced and capable of self reflecting and taking accountability and showing up in the relationship. So, whatever your partner has in their life that does that for them, then you guys are fundamentally compatible. And this is so cool because you guys get to teach each other things along the way. I don't necessarily find spiritual compatibility something I absolutely need in a relationship. I'm totally fine on my own in this particular space. I mean, I also have all of you guys. I'm pretty well covered in my life. But my partner has things that keep him really grounded. And when he's really grounded, he's able to show up in a partnership for me to be the best version of himself. And those things are running and drumming. He's got, his guy friends that he goes out with. There's plenty of stuff that he has that he loves and has loved before me that has helped him feel mentally, spiritually, emotionally well. And that's rad because when I start to get funky and grumpy, he can just pull me back down to earth and be like, get out of your head. Have you eaten today? Have you had water? And like that's incredibly compatible on a very fundamental, non-spiritual, super, in my opinion, sexy way. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's just so important that you own your own spiritual alignment without expecting everybody else to conform to the way that you live your life. You get to be the weird one, okay? You get to be the witchy one in the relationship. Just hold that space down. Like, is it cool if it's a shared space? Totally. I'm not saying don't look for that. I'm also saying maybe have some flexibility, and maybe in that flexibility, broadening the perspective and focusing on the fundamental compatibility. Okay, number two, ignoring red flags due to idealization. Y'all, I cannot stress this enough. Spiritual people, all my spiritual babes out there, look, I love that you look for the best in everybody. I think that that is an incredible characteristic, but I also think that it causes you a lot of problems because you're operating on an idealized version of somebody without having balanced boundaries, healthy boundaries. It is essential to maintain those healthy boundaries and recognize the way that some people behave. It's unacceptable. It doesn't matter what happened to them in their childhood. Not to say that what happened to them was a thing that we're just giving a thumbs up and approving and dismissing, like it's no big deal. But you cannot use that as an excuse for their behavior because you and I are not using what happened to us in our childhood as an excuse for treating people poorly or having unacceptable behavior. Ignoring the red flags is really harmful for you, the one that's dating my spiritual babes out here. Because what happens is you get stuck on the potential. You think that the potential is where you should be putting your time and your energy and nurturing that. No, people are responsible for nurturing their own potential. When you meet someone, there's things you need to be looking for that will show you whether or not they're really working on themselves. The second that you start to see red flags or find yourself brushing things off and saying that's no big deal, or asking them a bunch of questions to quote, try and understand them better, end quote, I need you to take a step back and be really honest with yourself about what you're doing. Are you trying to talk yourself out of claiming that this is a red flag? Because if you honestly were to say that it's a red flag, what would that mean? It would mean that this person is probably not the person for you. And then that means that the journey to finding love has to start over again. And that can feel very defeating. I understand that. But I feel like that comes from a place of like, oh my gosh, I need to have my person now. It comes from, and this is my opinion, but what I've seen professionally, it's scarcity mindset. I understand, like, you're going to have times where you're frustrated and where you're tired and where you just want to have like the one. I get that. And that's so valid. Anyone looking for the one is bound to be discouraged on their journey. But that's still, you being tired is not an excuse. You being impatient is not an excuse. Go work on those things. Okay. Go bring yourself into a place of true honesty with yourself about why you're making excuses for bad and unacceptable behavior. Because that's honestly a direct reflection back into the work that you need to do. And there's nothing wrong. Look, at the core, wanting to make a red flag, an orange flag, and then maybe a green flag, or however you're going to spin it in your mind, it makes sense because it's so uncomfortable to face the truth. The truth is not always something we want to look at. But the better you get at being honest with yourself, the easier it's going to be for you to call a red flag and detach from that very toxic idealization stage of giving so many chances, of being overly empathetic. Because I believe in empathy, but I also believe in toxic empathy or being overly empathetic. Everything is on a spectrum. And so if we have too much of it, we are out of balance. You don't need to beat yourself up for wanting to make a red flag, an orange flag, and a green flag, but you do need to take accountability. There's no shame in not wanting to face the truth. It's a hard thing to do sometimes, like just sometimes the circumstances or you want what you want and life isn't giving it to you at the moment. And that sucks. Like, let's be real. But I say this with so much love ignoring the red flags is only going to come around and hurt you and continue wasting your time. And if you really value your time, you're going to want to put in the effort of recognizing when you start to slip into idealization. Hey there, coffee lovers. Are you tired of settling for boring coffee? I have a treat for you. Today's episode is brought to you by Heartwork Coffee Bar, your one-stop destination for exceptional coffee experiences. Whether you're a coffee connoisseur or just someone who appreciates a great cup of joe, Heartwork Coffee Bar is here to elevate your coffee game to new heights. At Heartwork Coffee Bar, they take pride in their craft because each batch is carefully roasted to perfection, ensuring that every sip is a symphony of flavor. From the rich and the robust to the light and fruity, they have a coffee blend for every palate. And here's the best part. For you amazing podcast listeners, Heartwork Coffee Bar is offering an exclusive 10% discount on your purchase. Just use the code Empress10 at checkout and you'll save big on your order. Why settle for ordinary when you can indulge in the extraordinary coffee from Heartwork Coffee Bar? Remember to use code Empress10 for that special 10% discount and treat yourself to the coffee experience that you deserve. Don't miss out on this fantastic offer. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thanks to Heartwork Coffee Bar for making today's episode possible. Now go grab your favorite mug, brew a fresh cup, and enjoy the podcast with the perfect companion, Heartwork Coffee Bar. Cheers. Getting to the root of maybe why that's happening and come up with an action plan that keeps you accountable for calling a spade and making the tough choice to have to walk away or put some distance between you and this person. All right. So the last thing that I've seen, which is something that I've been guilty of a little in the past. So I just want to come out and say that. And that's forcing connections to fit a spiritual narrative. I feel like this comes out a lot with anyone that plays the victim, just because, well, we'll get into it. So there can be a tendency to force a connection to fit a spiritual narrative of like destiny or soulmates, soul connections, twin flames, and interpreting like every single encounter as a sign or something that's meant to be in the relationship. So basically looking at things like way too deeply instead of being able to be more objective. And that's unfortunate because it leaves people staying in relationships that they're not actually fulfilled in or compatible. You know, they say they have to stay there because there's a higher purpose to the connection, or like that this is their karma to stay. But I do think there are things that we are here to teach each other. You know, we want to be open. And I've been guilty of this in the sense of using the soulmate part of it. I don't necessarily feel like I believe that soulmates are like divinely connected, but more like, oh, we're linking up and like there are things that we can teach each other for sure, but in a growth and shared values way, not necessarily like, oh, I'm going to stay in a toxic relationship so that I can learn lessons. Like, no. And unfortunately, like I see women thinking that, a lot of women thinking that the whole higher purpose to the connection. I personally believe that you have this life. Whether or not you have more, I don't know. But I think it's because I don't know, I don't feel like it's a good idea to just assume that you're going to get more than what you have in the moment and to really make it count. And if you have a really limited amount of time, at least in the body that you have on this particular planet, why not use it to your advantage? You are not responsible for teaching someone how to be a good person, except if you're raising a child. Okay, if you're not raising kids, you don't need to teach grown people how to be good people at the sacrifice of yourself, of your happiness, of your safety. And I say that with all my heart because I just love you guys so much and I want to see you in healthy relationships. Like I'm so passionate about it. And it's so important to balance your spiritual intuition with practicing discernment and recognizing when a relationship is not serving your highest good. It cannot possibly be in your highest good to just continue experiencing abuse and very bad behavior. Okay, so that wraps up all three of the things that I see. I'm really glad that I got to share this with you guys today. I hope that it helped. And, you know, by being aware of some of these common mistakes, like I mentioned, you can game plan. You can actively move towards healthy and balanced relationships that do have elements of spiritual compatibility, but also compatibility in a fundamental and more holistic way because you want a long term partner. You're on the same team. You guys, I want you out here enjoying your dating experience as much as possible, as much as possible during this time. But what doesn't make it enjoyable is when you ignore the practical qualities about people, you ignore red flags, and you kind of force things into a spiritual narrative. Be you, be your spiritual person. Talk about the crystals, the spooky shit, all of to bring that on a date. And here's what's so cool about owning your spirituality. You're going to find a person that also owns their quirks and the things that just drive them, make them tick, bring them to life, bring them joy, fuel their passion. You're going to attract that. It's going to happen because when you're being the real version of yourself, you leave so much more room for people to also step into the real versions of themselves. I really believe that. I've seen that happen time and time again. It's happened in my life. So less about the other, less about what everyone else thinks. Really check in on the stories you're telling yourself. And at the end of the day, own being the weird spiritual girly and just have such a blast while you're dating. I hope that this encourages you. I hope that it gives you a couple of things to think about and some good direction to go in as you're meeting new people and falling in love. I will talk to you guys soon. Love you. Bye. Hey there, coffee lovers. Are you tired of settling for boring coffee? I have a treat for you. Today's episode is brought to you by Heartwork Coffee Bar, your one-stop destination for exceptional coffee experiences. Whether you're a coffee connoisseur or just someone who appreciates a great cup of joe, Heartwork Coffee Bar is here to elevate your coffee game to new heights. At Heartwork Coffee Bar, they take pride in their craft because each batch is carefully roasted to perfection, ensuring that every sip is a symphony of flavor. From the rich and the robust to the light and fruity, they have a coffee blend for every palate. And here's the best part. For you amazing podcast listeners, Heartwork Coffee Bar is offering an exclusive 10% discount on your purchase. Just use the code Empress10 at checkout and you'll save big on your order. Why settle for ordinary when you can indulge in the extraordinary coffee from Heartwork Coffee Bar? Remember to use code Empress10 for that special 10% discount and treat yourself to the coffee experience that you deserve. Don't miss out on this fantastic offer. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thanks to Heartwork Coffee Bar for making today's episode possible. Now go grab your favorite mug, brew a fresh cup, and enjoy the podcast with the perfect companion, Heartwork Coffee Bar. Cheers. Hey love, I want to ask you to rate and review my podcast. Giving me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts would mean the world to me. I love knowing who's listening and what everyone is getting from the episode, so please take a moment of your time to share your thoughts, and I look forward to reading your reviews soon.